Hello, everybody. Welcome back to this Little Mess Electrical My live stream about the Behringer PP1 guitar to TV and MIDI converter from this beloved brand of ours, Behringer. Is this working? Please let me know if the sound is okay and if there's anything we need to tweak, which, settings are meant to be stable, but they're not. So let's wait for getting some feedback about it and we'll move on because we got a couple of news for today. Thank you. Uh, hey, Brett, thank you for coming again. you're, you're really a trooper. I really appreciate. Uh, so, ooh, sorry. Um, okay. As you all know, I'm not good with computers. Hey, I'm not good with computers, and sadly, all this shebang works on computers. Since I've been fighting that, I forgot to do some switching on. But in the other hand, I might not need it. So let's just give a couple of minutes if anybody else is gonna be coming or attending, because we got some news today. And by the way, if you watched last stream, and you would remember that I was doing some playing out of it through MIDI to create some sounds because my dear friend Brett Lemmings asked me to create some audio clips so he can use it in a track. And turns out he did. The track is awesome. He did an sterling job with it. And I believe it's available in his Facebook, sorry, his YouTube page. Am I right, Brett? Can they listen to it, or is it still not public? No, thank you. You did the whole job. Thank you, Brett. But can they watch it on your channel? Shall they go running and give it a go? Oh, and while he's replying, uh, we might have some background sounds and noises. Obviously, I live in a home, a regular home. This is not a studio, so I got neighbors like everybody does. And mine's decided to do some DIY today, right below my window. So let's hope the double glazing does its job and the noise gate. Good. So yeah, Brett is agreeing. So yeah, please head. Would you like to share your channel with the people watching today or later? Just let me know. So let's get on with it, I guess. So yeah, so far, funny enough, news. Behringer did contacted me, gave me new information after the one I shared with you last on the last stream. In fact, because I was a little focused on doing it properly, I wasn't paying full attention to what I was reading in the show. Out those messages I read and I think I shared on the show last week were actually happening at the same time as the show. They were texting me. Sunday morning, sorry, Sunday afternoon. Uh, so I don't know who is public relations if they're working on a Sunday afternoon. So I'm very sorry for them. Probably they're just overflowing with so many claims that everybody needs to do overtime. Uh, but after that, the last news I got after we finished is what I'm going to be sharing today, which is this. So first of all, let me share. Let's present. Uh, Okay. So let's go here, choose here, and share. And here we go. Now I find I like this better. Cool. So this is their final word at the moment. Here we go. I'll give you just. Oh, wait. This is a little. No, no, no. That's not what you can read this properly, right? Okay. And in the meantime, let me see. How can I do this? Because I just realized that Brett cannot share his page. Okay. Oh, okay, that's right. Sorry. Um, Let me see. Okay. I think I found your page. And it's right there. I think you would appreciate to have some extra subscribers since you're doing such wonderful tracks. So I'm gonna share if I found how. Because this is no, no. About share channel or copy channel ID. Share channel, I would say. Copy link, and I'm gonna paste it on the chat. Right, meow. So yeah, please go to that Red Lemmings channel and check the latest track named. I'm going for it. I'm getting to it. I'm getting to it. Oh, me and End. Okay, that's it. Yeah, it's awesome. It's amazing what he did with what he took from the stream. Cool. So I take it you had enough time to read it. So yeah, they're giving up in a way, or they just don't want to go down that road. They want me to send it back. And because it's in guarantee, it's still fully covered by all guarantees and stuff. And although I don't like to do it because I don't really trust the post service, or I didn't used to. Although here in UK, I'm impressed. It's really, really good. Probably not German good, but it's really, really good. It's probably right behind it. So yeah, so that's one. Unless there's anybody out there who has any suggestions that we should try or we could try or just have a little bit of fun with it today, the whole point of this video is just letting you know that this unit is going back. I know. Yeah, Brett, I know. It's a pity. I don't like it, but I don't like it even more when supposedly, as I said in previous streams, I think the hardware is there. It should be able to do it. I don't know how easy would it be, and probably that's why they're going down the, okay, forget about it, send it back, and we just sort it out. Which that would be another very interesting next stream, because I'll try to make an effort to find out if they will fix it or replace it. No, I didn't order. I'm just gonna follow their mechanisms. I already put my support claim with my, how they call it, from my super partner, which in this case is Under Trust Music in Guildford, and they said, yeah, no problem, send it back, pack it well. Indeed, pack it well. They want me to put the box in wrap and the wrap in a box, so it doesn't get damaged on the way back. And with everything included, everything came in the box, and we'll sort you out. And as I said, I'll make an effort, which I'll disclose on a later date, to find out if they are gonna substitute it or fix it. As in, they will do the calibration themselves and then send it back to me. So yeah, that's the, well, yeah, dismantling, unless we got any proposition. And obviously I'll have to put this live stream frequency on hold, because after today's, it's gonna be pointless, because I won't be able to do anything through the week or the day before or anything, or even in the next stream. I don't assume I'm gonna have it back by next week. So this live stream about the PP1 will go on hold. Although I'm open to suggestions to other type of synth stuff I could do on my channel, just because it's there. But I think we all could use a little break after 5 very long and, for some people, tedious live streams. So, as I said, unless you have any suggestions, I'm just gonna proceed and get it out, pack it back, and move on with the show. And for that, we're gonna need this. Okay, and we don't need to have these anymore. So, get it out. And back to me. So, thankfully the repacking is easy, because all it came in the box was the manuals and the screws. Oh wait, no. The power cable. So, let's pack it up. Little screw bag. ready for the screws. Yeah, I think I'm not gonna bother trying to find the bag these things came in. Because the packing is protective enough, sorry. So, back in, put the lid, and like a coffin, we can put it to rest. And that kind of it's it. So I got all the subjects I could be doing some streaming about, but I don't know who would be interested or if any. Yeah, brother, don't worry. The box is not going like that on the mail. Now it needs to be wrapped and put inside a box. That's the what Undertones is asking me to do, and I find it fair enough. I'll just find any sort of box, and obviously because of shipping regulations, kind of I have to put that in a probably on a bag envelope, one of those plastic sticky ones, and then send it back. Yeah. Oh no, because they're gonna send a courier. That's I assume that's on Anderston's side. The best way for them is to send me a courier, and they'll pick and he'll pick it up the box, the double wrapped box. And I don't know. That should be it for the time. I had a ton of ideas and things that we could fill this little time with, or I don't know. So I don't know what else. I could talk of many things. I don't know the interest on knowing about those things. One thing I would love to share for. Oh, Brad, you want to know about the 35? Sure. Okay, give me a second. I can do that. Don't do that. Okay. Well, you can barely see it, but you still can see it. A little of background, and that's another thing. I would love to do another series of live streams because aside from all my other endeavors, music wise, through circumstances and using it as an excuse to boost my knowledge about synthesizers, to learn what was made by it in the past and what doesn't make sense, what is good, what is bad. Because as a guitar player, I'm a total newbie to this world, right? And I decided to, well, I got a very affordable on a local secondhand site, like in used gear site. I got hold of a very affordable digital Roland synthesizer called the JV880. That was the spark, the seed that started it all. And obviously, to learn to use that thing, not only for my own sake, synth-wise, but also because at that time I was involved in Rancy's live stream section called Name That Synth, which consists on making an obscure video of a piece of gear, make a piece of music with that piece of gear alone, no post-processing, not alteration of the pure sound of the piece of gear, not showing it, so the audience would have a chance, a stab at trying to guess by the sound of the piece of gear, synth gear, which one is it. Hence the name, that synth name. So that was one of the reasons why I had it. I had to investigate that, because that was the whole point about buying it, is having it so I can learn from it. But also I had to make a track with it, so I need to know the capabilities, what the thing could do. So I got into it. And in that process, I started learning about the whole Roland JV family of devices. Let me preface, although they were, and even up to this day, they hold pretty good, professional level devices, as in characteristics, specs, and programmability, the things you can do to it, how much range do you have on doing your own stuff. I learned that it was designed with the word expansion in mind, as in you bought the bare minimum of your device, and then you could also purchase things to expand its capabilities, namely the patches. The patches needs to be created from PCM samples, because the technology behind the JV family is an evolution, if you wish, of the D50 technology. You start with a very, very small milliseconds of a sample of a real instrument, and through their technology, through their synthesis technology, they stretch it to an instrument you can play live. So either even when you have the attack of the original instrument, let's say a piano, you have a piano attack, the body of the note and the modulation, the evolution, the envelopes would be done afterwards, after the fact, from the synthesis engine. So they decided to give the option of selling extras, as in extra PCM sounds where you could build your patches from. Then they went to selling you patches already programmed, either for the waves, the PCM samples already in the hardware, or some of them for the third type of expansion they release, which is the sound, what they call sound expansion, which is a PCB board. PCB board that you could plug inside the thing, inside the hardware, to extend both the amount of PCM samples, patch, not patch locations, because the hardware is limited to the locations you can use at the same time, although the later units allowed full access to those PCB expansion boards list of patches. So in a way, you were expanding your patch capabilities, how many you could hold and use very quickly, almost instantly on the later units. Because it wasn't that way on the JB880. The JB880, to retrieve the patches within the PCB expansion, which the name of it, so as a reference, is called SR-JB80-, the number, the serial, the sequential number of the card, I assume by release, as in the card first 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, which in first release, second release, third release. All of them with a purpose, with a target. Even the ones that were trying to cover a wide range of ground, they were still kind of focused on a genre or a style or an application, namely the session expansion, because they all had commercial, marketable, easy to remember names. So that is basically the three corners of when it comes just to use the same engine, the same hardware, but just get more juice out of it by having new sounds coming that it wasn't released in the beginning. Another way I'm coming to the conclusion, or at least that's how I explain it to me, that this family of units, what they actually were, what type of actual hardware technology was involved in these units. I'm come to this explanation, at least to me, that a little bit like the D, the D family, D50, D30, I think there was D10, D1010, etc., or 220, I think. Don't quote me on that. Please check your facts. On a very loose way to explain it, they're basically samplers, like the Akai Rack S family, which cannot sample. They can do all the other sound manipulations that an Akai sampler could do to the sample, but they could not record anything. So the only way to record new material, which you could work with, would be these expansions I'm talking about. Thank you, Brett. D10, D20, D110, D50, and D70. Thank you very much. That was, but with the difference that I believe the D family were based, I think I've heard 2 sample waveforms in a way. It gets confusing because you're talking about sample, not actual oscillators, but the way it's built and the way it is designed within a digital synthesizer, you could consider them oscillators because they are the source of the sound. So I think that the family was based on 2 oscillators with or without samples, because you always have the choice of choose as your initial wave to process afterwards being a basic real oscillator wave. You can go back all the way back to a sine wave if you wish with these things, but you also have the option to choose one of the sample real live instruments and then build from there. So I believe the D family was 2 oscillators. The JB family is built upon 4 oscillators that you could use all of them or just one of them and everything in between. Obviously, the more you pile up, the shorter your polyphony, your actual performance polyphony becomes. Not because they're taking notes away, it's because you're using them in more than one engine, in more than one oscillator. You're using more voices at the same time. At least that's how I understand it. So the only way to put in these pseudo samplers new samples was through these cards, these expansion cards. And when I learned about that, obviously through curiosity, because although some particular items are getting a little bit out of hand, it's still a family of Roland products which is financially sorry, tongue twist, financially attainable. It's not Jupiter 8 level of things. Obviously, it's not the same tech. We're talking digital here. We're talking computers, in a way of speaking. Samplers. As I said, the closest explanation to all the JV family and the ones that is spawned out of the JV family, I think, is XP, and XV, as in X-ray Victor. When you look right between and read between the lines, they're basically samplers, very complex, very powerful samplers that cannot sample. They cannot record a sound and then put that into the processing engine. But you could buy those samples in these expansion things. So I basically decided to go and try to get them all, to see what is what, why it's so many, is there any difference, which ones are worth or which ones are not. And for collecting's sake, what can I do? It's sad, but it's true. So in that pursuit, because the first knowledge I had was about the rack units, and they were affordable, I went for the rack units. I got them all. And in the process, I got the expansions. I got them, almost all of them. It's only one missing, but it's a very specific one. Then sadly, I learned about the keyboards, because in apparently very typical Roland fashion, they released the keyboard, which is the idea and the engine and the device that everybody needs, in a way that if you don't have anything to play keys, you need a keyboard. So that's your first step. Back in the day, we're talking 92 to 97, I think, or 96. It was the JV family released. Probably they got still being sold, the latest units, well into in the 2000s, but the release date is just on the 90s decade. So yeah, the first thing you needed, back then it wasn't such a typical thing to buy the rack just for a controller, unless you already had a controller because you've been on synthesizers for the previous 20 years, or any subset of that, like less time. So as I said, I finished with the plugins, with the cards, with the hand things that you could plug in it, and it will expand your options. I finished with the rack ones, and then I learned about the keyboards. And obviously, what I learned was what I already knew was about the JV80. In a way, the first ever release under the JV acronym. I said, good, the JV80. Then I vaguely heard about the JV90. Makes sense. 8, then the next one up is 90. And in the process, so by accident, I learned about the JV1000, which is bigger, badder, meaner, and comes with a full sequencer in it. Not that weird on a Roland JV line that they have a flagship, which is a be all, do all, and all. And I thought that was a sequence, 80, 90,000. Well, later on, doing a deeper research, turns out no, the 1,000 was in between 80 and 90. Because engine-wise, the 1,000 is a JV80 engine. In fact, it's nothing but a JV80 keyboard plus a sequencer inside the chassis, which apparently is going to become a recurrent theme in the JV line. So yeah, I thought there were 3 keyboards, and I said, okay, fair enough. It's going to be an effort, but it's even more space-wise, but let's go for it. Problem is, I got invited to this event in Cambridge in the Museum for Vintage? No, Museum... let me just get my facts right. Wait, is it here? Yep, got it. Center for Computer History in Cambridge. If you're into vintage computers, computer history, or video games, or music-related computers, you need to go and see that place. It's really, really awesome. So I got invited because we were celebrating, and we still are, 2023, celebrating the 40th anniversary of the Yamaha DX line. And my little baby, my DX11, got a chance to show that he's still kicking ass. It's lovely. I love it. Just for shits and giggles, because I also wanted to bring my FB01s, which are rack mounted. I needed a rack to carry them, and the only rack I had at the moment was the rack with the JV units. So I said, yeah, fair enough. Let's put the FB01s with the JV, and let's show both, just by accident. And I knew that I'd be having contact with other synth enthusiasts and people who didn't know that much about synths, even less about this vintage synth by now. Yeah, because it's almost 40 years of the JV line of the 90s. God, it's flying. Time is flying. So I did a deeper even research and tried to get all my facts right, know all I could learn about the whole JV line. And sadly, I learned that no, they weren't released just 3 keyboards, they were released 6 keyboards. And I said, okay, in for a penny, in for a pound. I am already committed to this, so let's go all the way in. So apart from the 80,000 and 90, which were the professional level ones, the flagships in a way, because they were released with around 2 years to year and a half to 2 years in between them, as in 80 was released, In fact, on a very simplified, the release sequence, I believe, is JV80 keyboard, JV880 rack, JV1080 rack, JV1000 keyboard, JV90 keyboard, JV2080 rack, and a couple of or 3 years later, the JV1010 rack unit. Not really rack, it's just one of those half rack units, desktop of the time, not like today's desktop, which all the controls just front panel desktop. Very simplified, but you still had the polyphony, you still had the multitimbrality, and you still had the quality, and you still had the option of plugging the cards you had been collecting. Give me a second, let's catch up with this. Mm-hmm. Okay, sorry, let me read this book. FPO1s in a 2-unit height 19-inch rack. The FPO1s are 1 unit high, even when I have two, so it's 2 half racks. So if you put 2 in one shelf, that's a full 1U. I know that Yamaha, with that in mind, because the FBO1s was an attempt to release a DX that bedroom musicians could afford. That was the whole point. Even more affordable than the computer system, who already had a DX7 inbuilt as a sound card, which I don't know the name of that. That would be a question for another person in YouTube. But 2 units, no, I don't know what you're talking about. That's some knowledge I'm missing. And those could be units for a whole episode, a whole stream, or a whole video. So, since I'm down to get the keyboards, I managed to get a JV1000, which is in the shop. Yes, I will. Thank you, Brett. I will Google it later. So I got my 1000, thinking that, if I get the top of the 3 keyboards, that would be plenty enough, at least to give me a taste of what if there was any difference, significant difference between the keyboards and the racks, and to help me learn. Then I learned about the other 3 keyboards, namely JB30, JB35, and JB50. But in my research, I came to the knowledge that, wait a second, it is similar, but it's not the same engine. It doesn't have the same power under the bonnet. It's not built the same. So why do they call it JV? It's not the same engine. It's not using the 4 oscillator pattern as in the 4 sample kernel to begin to build your sound up. It's not having the same editing capabilities. It's missing some of the performance controls, as in, well, the JV, I don't know how to call them. Let me explain this first. The JV, these 3, I call them parallel JBs, 30, 35, and 50. They were, for what I'm deducing, once again, this is not knowledge I've been shared or is been disclosed. Is all of this is just my train of thoughts, my deductions, and just trying to read between the lines. Those 3 keyboards were released for the MIDI file market, okay, for the MIDI player performer, for those type of I don't know if there was as popular in UK, but in Spain they were everywhere. A type of duets where one keyboard player would have a keyboard just, and sometimes just to justify the fact of having a sequencer in the keyboard or attached to the keyboard, where he was playing the whole MIDI with all sorts of qualities in it. Sorry. Nope. Yeah, this is. Yeah, it should fade. With all sorts of MIDI qualities, which is basically what gave the bad fame to the MIDI environment, to the MIDI file environment, the MIDI tracks and MIDI sequencers, because some of them were really, really, really lousy impersonations of the original tracks. And a singer, and that was the duet. That was the whole band packet to, I don't know, restaurants, weddings, function bands, you name it. So all it needed is a keyboard that would comply with the MIDI computer standard, with the MIDI file, as in 16 channels, at least this much polyphony, drums on channel 10, and the MIDI sound mapping, as in chunks of, I think it's chunks of 8, and in the same grouping, keyboards, etc., etc. So these 3 JBs was Roland attempt to get the JV concept of the rompler, sampler who cannot sample, rompler, and box it and make it instantly usable for that type of community, for the people who want to get the keyboard, plug the computer / sequencer, more likely sequencer back in the 90s, set very little things up in the keyboard, press play, and it would play the track with the same sounds it was designed in the sequencer or in the computer when created, or in the workstation keyboard. Okay, because at the time many of those files were made in workstations. So all those 3s are general MIDI compatible, as in they have the same sounds on the same places. MIDI channel 10 is hardwired to drums, but I believe they're using the same samples that the core units from the professional side of the JB family were using. So that's where the link comes from. As in, the piano sample they use on the JV80 and the JV880 and 1080 and so forth, the same sample is in the GS side of the keyboards. But instead of going to the extent of creating a 4 oscillator piano voice, very large, very complex, velocity divided with different timbres that would give you a very, very expressive and very nuanced performance, they just simplified to one single oscillator with the same sample. So it's a cut down. So those 3, 30, 35, and 50 are cut down versions for the general MIDI market. And I said, okay, wait, which one of these are more interesting? And there's a third factor coming to the more interesting, because my first plan was say, okay, because the prices of the keyboards are quite more significant than the prices of the rack units. You read into that as you wish. So the third factor for interest on the GS side of things, GS being improved, let's call it improved general MIDI spec from Roland, which is basically nicer programming of the patches, extra patches, instead of 127 patches, which is the general MIDI standard. They give you anywhere between 180 to 200 something patches by just changing the programming of the patch. Let me explain. In general MIDI, program 1 or 0, depending how your PC programs are organized, depending if you go from 0 to 127 or from 1 to 128, that's the difference. Program 1 is piano, as in concert, kind of grand piano. But then Roland, for the GS variation, they give you not only one concert grand piano, but they give you two more, I think, on top of that, which is one is slightly brighter and the other one is slightly sweeter, not duller, but sweeter, darker, a little like an old piano. So from where you, in a general MIDI spec, you would have one sound, they give you three. Obviously, they don't do that with every single sound in the general MIDI list in all 127, because some of the 127, then is A, there's no point in modifying them or improving in any way, and B, they're almost impossible to modify. I don't know, like the gunshot. How would you modify? How would you improve in that one? That is one of the crazy things about the general MIDI spec. And the other way they would improve it is they would include in the patch chorus and reverb settings. So general MIDI is effectless, GS is effects inbuilt, at least the data to trigger the hardware in the unit to make those things turn on and to have this setting for this adaptation. So for instance, piano 1 is effectless, but piano 2 is the same piano 1 but with a short reverb, or piano 3 could be just a very long roomy reverb with a little bit of wobbling, and that type of slightly modification. So yes, you get extra sounds, not like crazy completely new patches, just nuances of your patch you had before. And that's what this wants. And turns out that in the past month I managed to locate two of the GS keyboards on a price I can afford. That's why I bought my JB50 first, which was the one I had first on my list, the most interesting, because is the later unit. Therefore, they would give you a little more programming capability. I think I know for sure when I get the first one, the JB30, and they give you a very weird concept that Roland came out. So they would give that general MIDI community the option of have everything inside one single box, one single chassis, but not cannibalizing the wrong lineup of standalone sequencers that could do amazing things like recording, modifying, editing, cutting, pasting, bouncing, everything. Almost most of what a DAW you can do nowadays on the MIDI side, just on the MIDI. So they came with this very contraction, apart from a floppy that you need to insert your MIDI files into your keyboard, which is, it could be called a MIDI player recorder. I think that's how they call it, because it's not a sequencer, as in you don't have control over the individual tracks. It's not a sequencer because you don't have bar or note editing capabilities over the individual tracks. And since you don't have control over the individual tracks, trying to edit a master track with 16 instruments would be a nightmare on a letterbox size screen. It would be a nightmare on a computer, so think about on a letterbox size screen. So they decided that yes, it would remain 16-channel multi-timbral, but you only could have control of muting one track, any track in the file, but only one, and only muting. So no cutting, no editing, no deleting, nothing. Funny, really, really funny. Plus the recording it's only real time. You don't have a step sequencing. And although we call it nowadays motion recording, it would record all the changes you do on the buttons on real time through the recording period. It would be real time, 1-to-1. And I'm not sure, but still you don't have capabilities of going after the recording back to a specific bar and editing that bar alone. If you made a mistake, I think you have to go back and re-record everything back again. Unless you take the file out and bring it to a DAW, and then it would spread in tracks. But the one in the JB50 doesn't do that. So really funky, really weird concept. Like I'm giving you what you want, which is put the file, press play, and play on top. But I'm not giving you all the capabilities, professional capabilities that I'm selling for probably the same price as the whole keyboard on a standalone box. So the 50 came, I had got the 50, I know, and by accident, sadly, I guess I shouldn't stop checking my eBay lists, a 35 came along. 35 and 50 are so identical, almost to the screw, so identical that they come in the same manual. Which is also, I think, a tactic that Roland and probably many other manufacturers did on purpose. Like if you buy the JB35, they give you the manual for the 35 and for the 50. So at the same time you're learning about your 35, you're learning all the things you're missing because you never bought a 50, which is pushing you to, oh God, oh, sorry, I'll sell the 30 and I'll buy the 50 because it's the things that the 50 can do that I need to do my music. So, cheeky there. So the third factor of the order of buying the keyboards is the fourth type of expansion that the JB family released. Although all the manufacturers like Yamaha came with similar concepts, I don't think anybody made so much effort on the promotion of facilitating that type of expansion, which is what they called voice expansion. We go back to the PCB board that you have to plug inside your keyboard. It's very easy to plug. It's really user-friendly. It's a very specific, custom-made for Roland, I assume, or brought from anybody else, but very specific connector for that PCB that is totally user-friendly. There's no way to plug it wrong. There's no way to break it. There's no way. It was really, really thought through to allow the customers to go inside the guts of the synthesizer, which is never a good idea, if you ask me. But yes, so the voice expansion would actually expand the voice, the synth voice count of your synthesizer. They were designed and they're only, they were and they are only to be addressed to the keyboards. Those voice expansions cannot be applied to the rack units. Although one of them, 880, could use them, the other ones, they would be a clash. It would be totally pointless to add extra voices because they're maxed out already for the time. Polyphony is maxed out, multitimbrality is maxed out, 16 parts. Although this JB family are very funky, because even the professional things, the J880 was 8-part multitimbrels. Not really, it was 7+1. And 1080 and 2080 and 1010 were 16-part multitimbrels. Not really, 15+1, right? Because they kept that concept of one part would be drums and only drums, right? They call them rhythm because you can use drums as in rock drums or percussion or anything that you can hit. But it's a different specific type of sampler. Instead of being a per key multi-layer sample, it's as in you got more than one sample in one single key. You have multiple samples spread on different keys of the keyboard. JV50 midlife sequencer, yeah. Yeah, exactly. It almost does, but not really, not completely. So these voice expansions, basically, on a PCB that you would buy, through a trap door in the chassis of the unit, you would plug it, and it would, in the case of the JV80 and JV90, and JV1000, which were the real goals of those cards, they would give you a plethora of extra voices, namely all three keyboards opposite to the rack units. All three keyboards are only 8 parts multitimbral. Once again, 7 plus 1. With those cards, with the nuance that they got released 2 types of cards, one called JV, one called GS. The clue is in the name. The JV card would give you 8 extra parts multitimbrality with the same amount of notes polyphony you had on your previous 8 parts. So it would make an JV80 from 8 to 16 parts multitimbral. But once again, in this case, I believe, although I will know when I get it and use it and in anger, in this case you actually have 14 plus 2. Why? Because although they can interact and be triggered from the same keyboard, they kind of behave like 2 independent machines. Like you had the keyboard and the rack unit all being triggered from the same keyboard. But you don't have to carry a rack unit because it's inside your keyboard. It's been plugged in the motherboard of your keyboard. But it comes with 7 plus 1 parts multitimbrality and the polyphony that you attach to that. But the JV1 had the same exact engines, namely 4 oscillator, up to 4 oscillator sample or not based oscillators to build up your sounds. So literally was adding a JV80. In fact, because I just realized I made a mistake, I'll fix it in a second. Adding a JV80 to your JV keyboard. The mistake I made, the JV80 was released before they came out with the voice expansion cards concept. So the JV80 is one of the ones that would not take a voice expansion card. Okay, the voice expansion card was released for the JV1000 and everything at the same time. For the same reason, I believe the JV30 does not take voice expansion cards. And because the 30, 35, and 50 are GS units, they will not take sRJV80 patch or sound expansion cards neither, because it's not the same engine. They would crash, basically. It's like a German trying to speak to Spanish. They don't know what each other is talking about. So those voice expansions were designed for the JV1000s, JV90, and JV35 and 50, because I don't know how they manage, and I put it to the text because that's also on the list on the collection. How the hell a JV engine card would work with a GS keyboard? Because if it didn't work for the 30, how did they made it happen with a 35 and 50? Because what I understand is the one it was designed for the 35 and 50, and probably the 30, okay, forget about the 30. It was the other voice expansion, the GS, which is a JV30 in a PCB card, namely a 16-part multitimbral, 15 plus 1, GS compliant, General MIDI compliant sound engine with the same amount of polyphony as a JV engine, right? So it was designed, if you were really keen, and let's say you bought a JV1000 or even a JV90, and you were really keen on using general MIDI files, you could plug that card, that GS card, into your JV engine. They would understand each other, and you would be able to trigger that GS general MIDI engine at the same time as you were playing on your JV engine. And for the 35 and 50, it would basically duplicate your parts multitimbrality, which is already bonkers. You're talking 32 parts, like in 30 plus 2, which is an overkill. No matter how you see it, it's really an overkill. And but also it would multiply your polyphony count, so you would make a macro. But in the case of the 35 and 50, what it made way more sense is to put a JV engine. So if even the cheapest JV1010 was out of your range, the voice expansion JV card should give you, basically it's a 1010 in a card, so it would give you an JV80 engine that you could play from your GS keyboard. Yeah. Although they're meant to be, sorry, it's because, let me share this. No, here. It's a very good one, and it's not that crazy because, in fact, there's a very huge community of expats, Spanish expats in Germany. So a lot of Germans can or would understand some Spanish, but yeah, it's a funny one. So yeah, I went for the 51st because of the sequencer, the MIDI file player, and this I happened because it was the right price. Well, nah, I'm not gonna tell the story. So let's show the 35. Okay, so we're talking 35 is the second generation of GS JV keyboards, right? So supposedly they iron out the problems with the JV30, or they just didn't, and they released it as it is. For instance, so hardware-wise, although it was meant to be, well, I don't think you can ever say entry level with Roland products at all, ever. But it was meant to be an entry level keyboard. Even when it's that, you're talking about full metal box. It's totally metal, right? Probably some kind of aluminium, steelish, or some cheap steel, but it doesn't feel bendy. Yeah, not even the back. It doesn't feel bendy. It's really quite rigid and stable. So obviously what we have here is kind of a minimum representation of what the 80 and 90 and 1000. Remember, the 1000 is just an 80 with a sequencer. The same thing they did with a 50, but with a real sequencer, full on. In fact, I believe I've been told it was an MC50 Mark II. Like in literally the board of an FC50 Mark II just shoved into the keyboard. That is the JV1000 into a JV80 engine. It's kind of important to make the distinction because the real engine change in the series was between the 80 and the 90. Namely, although in the rack units between the JV880 and the JV1080, that was a real paradigm jump. Between the 1080 and the 2080, the engine doesn't really change. We're talking about a slight improvement in DAX, but it's more about the interface. That's what got improved into the 2080, and because it was being successful, all the expansion, the patch, the sound expansion cards were being a success. They just increased the capability of holding more of those expansions, being the JB80 having the JB80 keyboard and the 880 rack having only one slot for one of those sound expansions. But those could also get PCM expansions and patch expansions. And 1080 having 4 slots for sound expansions, and 2080 having 8 slots for sound expansion. So by the time they release the 2080, they assume you already had a collection that you have been putting together for the past 5 years. So you want a unit that could hold them all, and then some, like in future proof. So you could carry them in your rack case, all of them available very fast, very efficient, very clean. That was the end of the line as in quality increase, because the next product was the 1010, which was a 2080, not really, because this is 2080 is the same engine as the 1080. So it's a 1080 in half a rack with no editing power in the box. You could edit through MIDI, through C6, but no in the interface, because it doesn't even have a screen, just have an LED. Cool. So you're all ears, Brett. You might, if you, yeah, I'm gonna try and plug it and show it. So live performance controls, well, faders, for instance, only 3, and I believe is the same, more or less, with very little nuances, fascia on both 30, 35, and 50. Sorry, on all 3 of them. They just change how many extra things each button can do in the 30 and 35. Remember, 30 and 35, we're talking about exactly no different whatsoever. Same machine. It's exactly the same boards. The only difference is the 50, where the symbol is here, has a floppy drive. Everything else is the same. Like they were building chassis twice as big, or at least 2 times, because they had to cut for the floppy here. So yeah, 3 real controls which you could select for vibrato parameters, filter parameters, or envelope parameters, as in fact attack, decay, and release, not sustain. And that's the whole use, though. So apart from that, those 3 faders have no purpose in the whole unit. A data slider instead of a wheel. I assume they were cheaper. On the very much DX fashion of data. So when you go through parameters that 127 or 127 values, and you need to jump 50 values, having to go through it was a pain in the ass. So that was, you have a faster access through the data. You can jump faster and longer jumps with the data. And just a passive volume slider. That's it for sliders. Then, and this is the thing that doesn't make any sense to me. Once again, we're talking about an entry-level device. As in, the first goal is to save components, to make it cheaper, to make it not lighter, because weight-wise they're identical. I haven't got any 80 or 90 to talk about weight yet, but in the 30-35 they're identical weight. Is this way to hey, here's my ghetto blaster. Because remember, we're talking general MIDI here, hence the little thing about general MIDI families. Also because although they were meant to save parts, they created this silly, stupid grid just to access the patches. Because yes, we're talking about 127 patches, plus through the GS paradigm and the variation, the patches that had that option, once selected, you could multiply by 1, 2, or 3 sounds just by cycling the variation, like in piano 2, piano 1, variation 1, variation 2, variation 3, then piano 2, variation 1, variation 3. As I said, not all of the patches have variations at all, or not all of them have 3 variations. Some of them only have 1. Interesting. Another interesting thing is they give you 2 drum maps, which on the JV units you could buy. On the sound expansions, you also had drum maps in some of the expansions, so you're not left alone with the maps, i.e. the library of percussion sounds that came in the hardware. You also could expand the drum side of things. And in some of the cards are really, really awesome, like in, I don't know, the techno card or the house card. The drum kits you get extra are really, really interesting. But once again, this grid. So because the general MIDI system, so that is 4 times 4, that's 16 families of sounds. 4 times 4, 16. Yeah. Instead of giving an up and down or a bank up or a wheel, they give you 16 direct access buttons just to go to the family. That's the only function. They don't serve any other function. Just one of the 16 general MIDI families. And to comply with general MIDI, each family has 8 sounds, right? To end up with a grand total of 127 sounds / patches, name it, call it as you will. So they give you a 16 button grid for the families plus an 8 button grid for the patches within a family. Really? That many? Couldn't you just do with a phone pad like the Trinity, like in 1 to 9, and input your data, like in give me bank 1 and then straight MIDI, give me patch 99, which is this and that. No, so you get a faster access to the ones you want. It was a very early, you could call it a very early or very simplified way of category patch search. As in, I just want a piano or I want a brass. So I go to my brass family, find the button, press it, and then I scroll through the 8 options until I found the one I want. If I don't look it in the page and go straight to it. Yeah, JV10 is really cute and sounds very, very well. Remember that JV1010 is cute, and we're talking about the 1010 because it's the latest DAC they used. I've seen the best DAC in the whole family, namely, kind of, right? They're all, I think the sampling rate, and as in the bit depth, it's slightly better from the 80 to the 1010. And from there on, it's the same. It's just the improvement in the DACs. Excuse me. Wow. So, apart from that, you get a little bit of controls over the sounds, but not as much as design as you would do on the rack units or on the real JVs, namely 90,000 and 80, where you can go excruciatingly deep into the editing of the sounds per oscillator. So all that power times 4. And not only that, was one of the first, as in not one of the pioneers, but they were on the first wave of performance synthesizer, as in, I assume the way I read in Between the Lines, it was about a speed of access to all the data. So instead of having to get the engine, have a very fast processor to jump from patch to patch, they decided to give the option to load up to 8 patches at the same time. So they will load all of them with all the data ready for you to perform on the keyboard, or any way, shape, or form you could choose. As in, you could split octaves, you could split half and half, or you can layer on top, or you could. The big ones have, I think, 3 or 4 ways to play those, right? This one's not so much, and I'm not going to talk about that because I'm still learning about it, because it's a really funky thing. I think they only have split and layer, and I think they compile up only 4 or 8 sounds. As in, if you split it, you get 4 and 4. And if you layer, I think it's all 8 in the whole keyboard, or something like that. As I said, don't quote me, because I still don't know that one for sure. And although they make a big point on the name of the line that, hey, this is a JV, it's expandable. Like, it's not a dead thing. Once you buy it, you still can build up on it. The only way these ones can do it, we got nothing on the edge, which is where the standard cards would go in the main keyboards. Standard cards for your PCM extra sounds, for your oscillators, and your data, either recorded or bought patch and performance data. Those slots are gone. They're not there because they can't use it. It's not the same engine. But they still give you the trapdoor, which, to my knowledge, the only one missing the trapdoor is the JB30. But as I said, don't quote me on that. This is still knowledge I have a little blurred, because it doesn't make any sense, because they wanted to sell voice expansions cards for the JB30, even when it could not use the PCM expansions, the data expansions, or the sound expansions. But they would have wanted to sell the voice expansions. So I think it does not have it, because it was released very shortly after the 880, namely before the concept of the voice expansion was released with the JV90. Sorry, with the JV1000. So it was in that area. Some websites even say that the JV8 and JV30 were released at the same time in the same year. So they already had this general MIDI parallel universe concept going on in Roland. So this trapdoor for this 35/50, remember it's the same one, is for a voice expansion. And until I know better, I think you could plug both voice expansions, the JV and the GS. So if you want a JV engine, you could plug it in this slot. So by buying the cheaper sibling, you still could get the higher tier 4 oscillator type of sounds to be triggered from this. Obviously not edited. And as I said, until I know better, because it doesn't make much sense hardware-wise. Okay. And that is it. That's all it is. It's a general MIDI box. Is one of those. Is one of the keyboards who gave bad name to the general MIDI standard. Because, and this is my opinion, the same way as the DX7s, DX family, namely the DX7, it got abused, as in just used as is out of the box, and they didn't really explore the potential of it, and it got overused. Like, everybody had to have a DX7 sound in your track, otherwise you're not in the 80s, mate. You're not in. Cool. So let's plug it and let me show you what is behind what I'm talking about. Just give me a second. Another fun fact that makes the cut between the real JVs and this GS line is the real JVs plugged to the mains. The GS JVs use guitar pedal power supplies, 9 volts center negative, like the Boss, the ones they already had coming from Boss. So if you had any doubt, they were sibling companies. Funny, eh? And just to talking about trying to paint the 16 chapel through a letterbox, only 2 line, I think is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 16 character 2 line LCD display. And that's all you get. Thankfully, there's not much editing power in it, but still. Okay. Let me deal with the sound so I can send it to you. Then if we're not gonna use this, well, let's not do nothing drastic. Okay. Just wait a second. Huh. Okay, this is weird. Oh, lovely. Okay. That's why. Okay, let me know if this is too loud. Yeah, let me know if this is too loud because I have to do it different. This one, at the moment, I just picked it up yesterday. It's in need of some maintenance. It has malfunctions, so bear with me, please. One of them being the master volume. And the other one is that I lost one of the audio channels, so you're very likely gonna listen to this in mono. So to facilitate, I'll put it in mono. So people with OCD tendencies like me don't get mad. So yeah, please me know if you can hear the keyboard. Okay, compression and gates. I can do that. Might get a little harsh. You know what? There. So, bare bone as it comes. Oh, okay. Okay. Let's see now. So I hear a little low, so I'm gonna. No, I'm not gonna change jaws. I'm just going to. How can I do this? Let's see if I can do this instead. Okay. What about now? Let me show you. Okay, I'm gonna give for granted you can hear this. That is loud enough. Because now I'm gonna try and show the nuances, what makes, well, backpack 3 or mic, the microphone, but that's okay, I guess. Nice piano sound. I don't really get that, but yeah. Yeah, that's I think that was the whole point, and the more I compare it, the more true this statement seems to be true. Is the JV acronym is basically the sample set. They're using the same sample set, although the sounds and the patches are built on a different engine with different options in a way. The sound quality, the DAX probably being equivalent to the 1080 DAX, then the beat depth and the sample depth is the same. So you basically having 1080 sounds on a general MIDI application. That's how I understand this subfamily of JVs. So let me explain the GS concept. So I'm going to play the same sound, but then I'm going to switch to the variations, what they call nuances in a way. You have the control of turning chorus and reverb on and off at any time on two buttons on the console. Mostly because that's most of the big difference and the big enhancement of the sound of all the GS family is like the first thing they added, apart probably even before extra patches, it was reverb and chorus, which the general MIDI doesn't have. So I'm gonna play it. I'm gonna first show it raw. I'm gonna switch both off. I'm gonna show you the variations. I'll point with my fingers, and then I'll show you with both effects on as reverb and chorus. Sadly, when I say reverb and chorus, that's the controls you have on the top, but behind the hood, reverb can also do delay. It's like a multi-effects, a very small multi-effects per button. The same way that I believe chorus can also do tremolo and flanger, I believe. So sometimes when I press the chorus button, it's not actually a chorus, it's kicking in, it's something else. I think it's like 6 or 7 different effects within the family of reverb. We could call it ambience if you wish, and chorus we could call it modulation. That's actually what two buttons is turning on and off, is modulation or ambience. But that's why you might start hearing different effects, that it's not, oh wait, that's not reverb, that's a delay there, it's re-tapping or it's re-hitting. Okay, let me show you. One, no. So, can you hear the differences? And that's just one of the 127 originally intended sounds, right? So that some of them have only one variation, some of them have no variations. That's why you don't get 360 sounds out of it. But once you multiply by adding modulation and reverb, you get a nice palette of nuances. Let me put that into context. Probably some of the nuances got a little lost, or they could be a little more drastic when you have both sides, left and right. Sadly, right now you only listen to left, because right, I don't know why it's not working. It's been reset. Shortly last night I tried to set it up, but it wouldn't play ball. So could be something to do with the fact that the volume fader is broken. So when I change that, I'll double check it. But you get the gist. So if you want me to play any other sound apart from the piano, because you're curious, so anything specific, just let me know and I'll do it. Otherwise, we can start wrapping it up. because that's not even intended. That's not related to this to this stream. Although I love it because I'm putting. It's really fascinating to me coming from guitar and having started learning about analog synthesis 2 years ago. In a way, it's really fascinating how everything evolved and the marketing resources. Let's call it resources. I would call them tricks, but let's call them resources that manufacturers like Roland pulled out just to sell more units because it's a business. They need to keep the doors open and pay the bills and everybody's wages. Don't know what. Something's wrong with my ear. So, Mr. Lemmings, what do you say? Do you have any questions, any requests? Or shall we just wrap it up and have a nice weekend? By the way, where are you? I don't think I remember. Okay, let me see what's going on. Oh, okay, yeah. Careful, don't cut yourself. Uh, oh, Eric Satie. Oh my God, that's such an insult for the master, Eric Satie. No, I'm just hammering random notes. Thank you, you're too kind. You're too kind. So, any requests, any questions, or shall we just call it a live stream? As in one on each family, is a specific one you're interested, or scroll through some of them randomly? Oh, okay. I realized this. I just okay. Okay, strings, voice, and bass. So in this case, because we're talking general MIDI, voice is gonna be more like choir. There is. I don't know if you're familiar with the general MIDI, but in fact, can I? How can I pull it? So yeah, when they designed the general MIDI spec, they tried to synthesize, no pun intended, the most common, most necessary families. So basically, you got 16 families being in order: piano, chromatic percussion, organ, guitar, bass, yeah, bass, strings and orchestra, like in single strings, and then ensemble. Then ensemble, which is meant to be strings and brass and wood, woodwinds, I guess. Uh, Brass section, reed section, as in steel sax, so brass, bassoon, clarinet, the type. Pipe, as in recorder, flute. Then synth leads, synth pads, and synth effects, as in very wobbly, very modulated synth sounds. Then there's an ethnic group, a percussive group, and a special effects, which to me is the waste. It's like it's really, really wasteful. Oh, but huh, I'm just going through the list of patches on the DS spec, so it gives you the core one and all the modifications. And funny enough, on the special effects, the telephone sound has five variations. It's like what? This is strange. So yeah, let's go for what you said. So let's go for strings, voice, bass, and synths. Let's do that. I'm gonna just scroll through it, so just a scale and some bass on top, okay? Or anything else I feel like. Let me mute this. So let me catch up. Yes, go ahead, sample everything. That's why I've been giving you the single notes. Uh, you can feel the sample nature of these sounds because most of what's going on as you scroll through the octaves, you can hear is just happening at a different frequency on a different speed. Huh. Yep, Fairlight for a fiber. That's what it is. It's the whole principle of the Fairlight is get one sample and stretch it, which it's also even more jarring when you find out that your sound expansion voids, the ones that at the time are fetching the highest prices, namely the techno card or the house card, the dance card. Uh, Most of what's inside is barely usable inside, as on the way it comes in the keyboard, because it's exactly that. It's just recordings, actual recordings, like you would do with your own microphone. Sometimes it's even a drum beat with a voice or something like that. It's just pitch stretched through the keyboard. So not only you get different tempos on each key for the rhythm part of your sound, but at one point it keeps if you when you go down it gets grainier and grainier because you can hear the gaps in between the digital chunks, and when you go high it goes hypersonic because it's multiplicating, it's playing so fast, and they come very very short because they choose not to cycle the samples because it would sound weird because if the sample is just some voice saying hey yeah, if you cycle you would be hearing hey yeah hey yeah hey yeah hey yeah, and if you pitch it up it would be it would be even less useful. But and I said it becomes jarring when you find out that out of 256 new sounds you get in 100 of them, you only can use one key of them out of the 70 keys in the keyboard, or you need to use a different key per tempo, or you just have to sample in another machine and then pitch it, stretch it, but time correct it, as in let it change pitch but not tempo. Yeah, it is a really funny bunch. Oh, so we're getting cracky noises. Okay, yeah, I think I've been saturating the preamp. I can see some red lights over here. That could have been it, yeah. As I said, because I have no control on the keyboard for the volume, so some sounds are more powerful than others. I couldn't hear much distortion in my side. That's why I let it go. But yeah, if it's useful, go for it. Good. I think that's it. I bored you enough for 2 hours and a half. Uh, Stay tuned to the channel for the next installment of the PP1 adventure. Whenever that happens, which I doubt is going to be next week. And probably some other things if I get enough requests or enough messages, if anybody's interested. I got many other things, as in keyboard format or rack format. I would love to be able to share with you if you're interested. This week, you all take care and never stop playing music. Okay? Close it out.